Hello, my name's David Reilly, and today I'm going to be guiding you through the process of setting up your survey for online administration through the Google Forms servers. So if we go to forms.google.com, it's a nice, easy to use interface. The advantage of Google Forms, of course, is free. You don't require a professional upgrade to get your data out of it, but it is very limited in functionality. So you can't do nice formatting, and it's limited in that way. Now that's going to be a problem when we come to the information sheet, but I'll show you a way to get around that. Another limitation of Google Forms is that it doesn't actually have a Likert scale, which I assume that most students will be using. So there is a workaround for that, but it makes it difficult then when you want to export your data into SPSS. So I'll show you a couple of tips and tricks that I've learned to speed that up, and I'd strongly urge you to use these rather than try to attempt to come up with your own little tips and tricks, because you don't want to collect the data and then find it's impossible to put into SPSS. So I'm just going to click on this option here that says blank. That'll create a new form. Now I've got to give it a name up the top there. So I'm going to call it class questionnaire. Now the very first page that the user needs to be presented with is the information sheet. So I'm going to call this information sheet, and you can see here we've got an information sheet for our survey. I have filled it in, and I've described it as setting high standards for oneself. The actual scale is a measure of perfectionism and a preference for neatness and tidiness. That validity check scale is actually a measure of need for orderliness, sort of along the lines of sort of OCD traits. The reason that we are a little bit vague here is we don't want to use psychological language that the participant will be unfamiliar with, and also we don't want to tell them the true intent of the scale in case that alters the way that they respond. Alright, now if I take this information here, I select it, and I go to the clipboard and copy, and then I go back here and I paste it in as the form description. You'll see straight away that it's lost all the formatting, and it really doesn't look professional. So you don't actually have an option here to change the formatting of it. So what I'm going to do to get around that, I'm going to embed an image in the survey, which is just a copy of the information sheet. So what I'm going to do, and I'll need to zoom out just a little bit so I can fit more on. Okay, so go for the first part. I use the print screen function. So I hit on a Windows machine, Alt print screen, and then I go to trusty paint. I paste that in. Now I'm going to have to zoom out here. The font looks a little bit smaller there because I'm zoomed out, but it'll be fine when we paste it in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this text here and try to select roughly the same amount of screen as each time. That way you won't have one of your images with really small writing and another one with big writing. I'm going to go to the crop feature here, and I'm going to go to save as, and I'm going to call this information 1. Then I go back to my survey, Okay, so we've got the aim, the exercise, and we've got the voluntary consent bit at the bottom. So that looks perfect. I'm going to hit Alt Print Screen again, and I'm going to go into Paint and Paste, and I'll select roughly the same amount of text here and crop, and I'm going to save that as information sheet 2. Alright, so now I can embed that as a image. So I'm going to click on the Add Image button here. So you can either click here and choose an image to upload. I'm going to just drag from my folder here, Information Sheet 1. There we go. I'm going to leave the image title blank. So that's looking good. I'll add another image, and that will be our second page of the information sheet. Alright, so that's looking good. Now I'm actually going to delete this question here. The reason why is on the information sheet you want to just present the informed consent, and that's all. So what I want to do is click on this button here that says Add Section. So that takes it to a section, by the way, in Google Forms means a page. So it'll take it to a new page. So they'll read through the information sheet first, and if they choose to proceed, then it's deemed to have informed consent. Now for this section here, I'm going to go to my scale, the second page here, and this is our perfectionist scale. Alright. Now originally when I had this numbered like that for a printed administration, but Google Forms will actually add its own number. So when I'm copying and pasting it, I don't want to be copying and pasting that number. So if you do have a numbered list here, very easy to fix. Just go to the numbering feature and turn that off. Alright, so I'm going to go to the first item now, which says I'm not bothered by messy people. Okay. Now I'm going to give the scale a name. I'm not going to call it a perfectionism scale. I'm going to call it the Reilly preferences scale RPS. So it's a little bit vague. Now I'm going to take my instructions to the user, and I'm going to paste them here for the description. Alright. Now I'm going to click on this button here that says Add Question. And we've got a few options here. You can do a multiple choice, and that's really good for demographics like gender, age, etc. There is an option for a linear scale, which you'd think might be suitable for a Likert. So if I put a question in here, put the first question in here, not bothered by messy people. I could put strongly disagree, strongly agree. But what's going to happen is that it won't allow you to put choices 2, 3 and 4. So this is an example of what we would call a bipolar scale. So you will have seen in your textbook there was the morally debatable behaviours checklist, asking whether it's okay to cheat on taxes, and I think it was a score from 1 to 10. bipolar scales are good, but they're not a Likert scale. So we actually can't use the linear scale. Now, unlike many of the professional services, it doesn't actually support a Likert scale, which is unfortunate. The closest we can get, though, is what we call a multiple choice grid. And what that allows you to do is allow you to have multiple questions and then some columns that they respond to. So I'm going to paste my first question here. There we go. And I hit the tab key, go to the next one, and I select the next item. I dislike imperfect work. I hit the tab key again. I demand perfection is in others. The tab key. I keep a sharp eye on others' work. And you'll notice every time that I paste a question in, it adds a new row. So I would go through and I would add all the items. I'm not going to do all of them today just to cut down on the time of this lecture capture, but I'll add enough that we've got 10 to 15 questions. You've got to be careful when you're doing this as well, that you don't accidentally miss a question when you're copying it in, or paste the same question twice. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my columns, and in the printed survey we had strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. So these are the labels that we'll use. Let's go to the top. So strongly disagree. I'll paste that in. Disagree. Whoop. There we go. Now, even though we're displaying these columns, the output that we'd like to get into SPSS is these numbers. Okay, and in a Likert scale, with a professional package, it would actually do the conversion for you. But because Google Forms is free, it doesn't. So it's a little bit fiddly to convert between it. What we're going to end up doing is taking these labels here, we'll search for them, and then do a replacement. So we'd search for strongly disagree, and we'd replace that with the number 1, and then disagree, and so on. To make it easier for you, what I would suggest you do though is add a number at the beginning. That just makes it easier to search. So if I did a search for disagree, it would do the find replacement for the first option as well. But if I'm doing a search for the number 1 dot strongly disagree, 2 dot disagree, it means that it won't accidentally overwrite your data. So it'll save you a lot of hassle if you just add the numerical prefix at the beginning. Alright. So, whoops. Okay, so I'll call this Reilly. What would we call it? The Reilly preferences. Okay. Alright, now if I tick this box here, what that'll allow us to do is restrict the participant's ability to jump to the next page, until they've actually answered each question. That way you won't have any missing data. Might make life a little bit easier. Now I want to insert a new section here. Okay. We go back to our survey. The second one here was asking about a need for order, and I'm going to call that preference for tidiness. I'm going to add a new question here, and I'm going to take the instructions, pop them in, and I'm going to make this again a multiple choice grid. So just like before, 1, strongly disagree, 2, disagree, 3, neutral, scroll down, 4, agree, 5, strongly agree. Okay. I'm going to go back to the items again from my print survey. I like order is the first row. The next one is I like to tidy up. I want everything to be just right. I love order and regularity. I do things according to a plan. I often forget to put things back in their proper place. Now you see how it's a multi-line one, so you want to select all of the text so that you don't leave part of the question out. I leave a mess in my room. So this would be an example of a negatively worded item. You'd have to recode. I leave my belongings around. I'm not bothered by messy people. The final one should be I'm not bothered by disorder. Okay. So we've got our questionnaire there. Again, I'm going to tick that box. And I'm going to add a new section now. And go to the final page of my printed survey. So we've got a question here, what's your gender? I'm going to call this demographics. The first question is gender. So I'm going to make male, then female, and I'm going to leave other there as well as an option. Okay, so the next question I want to ask is what is your age group? So what they've done here is they've grouped it into brackets. Another option would be just a what we call a short answer response. It's where you would enter the literal age. It's entirely up to you how you want to format your age. I'm just going to go for a short answer for this one. And I'll call, let's ignore that. We'll call that age. And it's a number, and it checks that the age is actually been entered as a number. The next demographic here, what is your birth order? Now the reason we've included that is so that we have an extra check of validity, because it is believed in the literature that the birth order can, are you the firstborn, secondborn, third, that can be associated with your perfectionism. So it's an example of criterion validity. It's something that you'd have to think about before you administer your survey. Are there any other things or outcomes that we can measure, like GPA or birth order or socioeconomic status, that might be correlated with our construct? So what is your birth order? Done age. Oh, I seem to have overwritten somehow my gender, so I'll do gender again. Male, female, and other. And the beauty of this is you can actually reorder these. So I can bring gender up to here. Whoop. I've got in the correct order now. So I add a new question. Birth order. What is birth order? I'm not going to make that a required one. Go for multiple choice again. The first option is firstborn or only child. The second option is middle child. Final option, younger child. Youngest, sorry. Okay. So now I've got all my demographics. I might move age just above because that's slightly more important than birth order. Okay, so I've got gender, age and birth order. Could add a new section now. New section, and that'll just be a thank you. Thank you for your participation. It is really appreciated. So you do that just to make them feel good about the time that they've spent helping you out. So before I finish, okay, let's drag the birth order back up. There we go. And somehow I seem to have added an extra page here, so I'm just going to delete that section. There we go. Alright, so I'll just go to the beginning of the survey and make sure I've got everything right. I've got my information sheet here. I've got my multiple choice grid here. I've got my validity check. I've got some demographic information. I might just put a little description. This section asks for general demographic information in order to describe our sample. Each question is optional. Alright, so now I've finished my survey. I think I've finished. What we want to do now is go do the preview. Okay, so I've got our information sheet. Formatting isn't great. I would change that heading if I could, but Google Forms we're limited. We've got the information sheet there. It's font is big enough to be easily legible, and then you click next. There's Reilly preferences scale. So here's some instructions for my user. So suppose I'm really high on perfectionism. Well, I'm going to disagree with that because I actually am bothered by messy people. And I really dislike imperfect work. I think Others should as well, and I keep a sharp eye on others' work. I demand quality, I expect, etc. How I stand for others, all the traits of perfectionism. I'm not bothered by disorder. Well, no, I'm actually going to click no to that. Strongly disagree. I want everything to be just right. Yep, it describes... prefer to just let things happen. No, not if you're a perfectionist. I pay too little attention to detail. No, that's not a perfectionist. I pay attention to detail, very much so. I have an eye for details. Yes, I want every detail. Now you'll see that some of these items here are redundant, so I suspect a lot will get chucked out during item analysis. But the purpose of this is just to demonstrate how to set it up. Demand nothing less than perfectionists. Yep, that sounds great. Preference for tidiness. Okay, so I like order, I like to tidy up, I want everything to be just right. I love order and regularity. Okay, so filling this out as if I were a perfectionist. Okay, now you'll notice it's still saying one response per row. So because I've made it not optional, they have to complete it, I need to go back and fill out that item. And once I do, the user can then click on. So demographic information, I'm going to put male, age, I'm going to lie, 22, and I'm a firstborn. Then next, they get their thank you page. In fact, I'll probably change that instead of information sheet. That was for the first page. I'll probably change that heading to class exercise or class scale development exercise. Alright, now I click on submit. So that's actually saved some data for me now. I'm going to submit another response now. The reason is I just want a couple of responses so that I can show you how to export the data. Now I'm not going to be really paying attention to this, so I'm just going to fill them out, a bit like donkey voting. Next, go to the first one. Male, July 23, firstborn again. Submit another response, just so we've got a few participants' data. By the way, this is your worst case scenario when you're doing an actual research project, that people aren't even reading the questions and they're just filling out blank responses. Okay. I'll put a female for this one. Age 18, and I'm a middle child. Next. And submit. Okay, so I can close this window now. I'll go back to my questionnaire, and you'll notice now, if you click here, responses, we've actually got 3 participants. So this information won't be really useful here. You'll be graphing it yourself with a histogram in SPSS, but I can actually go to individual responses and see how they filled out their survey. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go back to summary now, and I want to click this button here that says create spreadsheet. And what that'll do is create a new spreadsheet in Google, the Google Spreadsheet program. Okay. On the left here, at our timestamp when it was recorded. We won't be really looking at that. We've got each of our questions. And you can see here, if I click on a particular one, it actually gives us the wording of the scale. Now, unfortunately though, instead of a Likert scale, it's actually recorded as text. So what we want to do is we go to the Edit menu, and we can do Find Replace. Now this will work great if both of your scales, so your scale and the validity check scale, are in the same format. If they're in a different format, so let's say you were using the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, which is a 4-point Likert, then what you'll need to do is select your scales here, your first scale, and select only those columns, do the Find Replace, and then do a second Find Replace for your validity check scale. But because that's not a problem with this one, they're both 5-point, I can just go do a straight Find Replace. So what I want to do is I want to find one strongly disagree. I want to replace that with the number 1, and then click on Replace All. Okay, now 2 disagree, and I want to replace it with 2. And you'll see that it's actually gone and done that for me and converted it into a number. And I'll repeat that for the remaining ones. 3 was neutral, replace with a 3. 4 was agree, replace that with a 4. And so that's how you convert from a multiple choice grid into a Likert scale. Okay, I'm just going to have a look at the data and make sure there isn't any that I've missed, so they're all looking good. I might want to recode gender as well, so find and replace male, replace that with a 0. This is what we call dummy coding. Male is 0, female is 1. And if you did have any others, okay, so I'm going to undo this. What's actually happened, because the word male is also present in female, it's actually overwritten part of female. So I'll do the females first, find and replace, female 1, and then male is 0. Okay, so for these, I'm going to find and replace. Find and replace firstborn or only child. Replace that with a 1. Middle child. Replace that with a 2. So we convert it to a nominal variable. And what was the third option? Youngest child. If I had any responses there, youngest child, I'd make that a 3. We don't have any responses for that one. Okay, so that's all looking good. We've got our age here in years. So this is just about ready to export into SPSS. So what I want to do is I want to save and then download as Microsoft Excel. Class questionnaire. Oop, I'll save in the right folder. And then I can open that up in Google, Excel. And then I can do a little bit more formatting. You've got a little bit more control. I'll click on Enable Editing. I'm going to delete the timestamp. And I'm going to put ID here. And then I'm going to just put, so the formatting of this column needs to be fixed. Format cells. You'll have to excuse my slow laptop here. Okay, number. I'm going to make 0 decimal places. 3. If you had more, you'd feel a tantrum. So we'll do it the old-fashioned way. What I'll do is I'll go to the variable view and I'll set up my variable. So variable, so an ID. Make that 0 decimal places. It's going to be nominal. Then we've got question 1 through to this one. Nothing less than perfection. So I'll start by question 1. I'll make it 0 decimal places. Question 2. Question 3, question 4, question 5, question 6, question 7, question 8, question 9, question 10, question 11, question 12, question 13, question 14, question 15. All depends on how many items we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Obviously you'd have more. For the purposes of this demonstration, I only entered the first 16 questions. Now, your validity questionnaire, there were 10 items. V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6, V7, V8, V8, V9, and V10. Now the next questions that we had was gender, age, and birth order. So gender, age, and birth order. So, SPSS doesn't like spaces. Birth order. So gender, make it 0 decimal place, and birth order. And gender actually should be a nominal, as well birth order. Now I'm going to specify some values here if you haven't already, and set up your data file. 0 will be male, 1 will be female, and 2 will be other. Okay. Birth order 0 or 1, first born, 2, middle child, 3, youngest. click on add. There we go. Alright, so now that we've got our data set up and it matches the same order as we have here in our Excel, I'm just going to select all the columns and then select the rows, and I can just paste that straight in. Okay. Now if I scroll towards the end, you can see here gender and birth order, and if we tick this value labels button, you can actually see there. So now I've got my data into SPSS. So that's how you import your data from Google Forms. It's a relatively straightforward process if you do the find replace in the Google Forms spreadsheet. If you leave it till the end and try to do it in SPSS, it really is very fiddly. And so hopefully that'll save you a little bit of time if you decide to go with Google Forms.